Hello everyone, welcome to Spectra Education. Myself Dr. Rajeshwar Panjab. We are discussing about the mathematical physics, right? In mathematical physics, basically we are discussing about the vector calculus, and in vector calculus, in the last few video lectures, we have discussed about the vector differentiation. So we have already discussed about the gradient of a scalar function, divergence of a vector function, and curl of a vector functions. As usual, in today's lecture, we will also discuss in two languages, English as well as in Bengali. The critical concepts I will also clear in our mother language Bengali. Okay. So let's start with the vector integration. Ajke amra start korbo vector integration. Vector integration is basically for the integration of a vector field. This concept is little bit different from the vector differentiation part, but I will try to discuss everything in a slow way by which you can understand properly. খুব ধীরে ধীরে প্রত্যেকটা জিনিসকে আমরা ভেক্টর ইন্টিগ্রেশনের আলোচনা করব, যেখান থেকে তোমরা যাতে খুব ভালো করে ভেক্টর ইন্টিগ্রেশনটা বুঝে নিতে পারো। ওকে, সো ফার্স্ট I will show you three different types of vector integrations. There are vector line integration, there are vector surface integration, and vector volume integration. Okay, so I will discuss one by one separately in separate video lectures. Today I will only focus about the vector line integration. What is the mathematical notation or mathematical expression of the line integration I will discuss. Second, I will discuss how this notations was discovered, and third, how to solve the problems by taking some problems from previous year Calcutta University problems. Okay, so line integration er amra mathematical expression dekhbo, seta kotha theke esheche dekhbo, ar kichu amra previous year question solve korbo. So without taking much time, let's start with the line integration, and it will be my suggestion that if you take the notes with this video lecture, so it will helps you a lot. So first, vector line integration. Okay, so first write down what is the definition, and I know that you will not properly understand from the definition, so it's my duty to explain everything. Okay, so first write down, without much more understanding, write down what is the definition of a line integration. Okay, লাইন ইন্টিগ্রেশনের ডেফিনেশনটিকে ফার্স্ট লিখব, তারপর এর মানেটা কি একদম পিক্টোরিয়ালি আমরা ভিজুয়ালাইজ করব। সো ফার্স্ট রাইট ডাউন দিস, দ্য ইন্টিগ্রেশন of a vector field, integration of a vector field or function along a given line or path or curve, all of the same things, is known as vector line integration. Okay, so what it means, এর মানেটা কি একটু বুঝে নেওয়া যাক। This is the definition of vector line integration. So I need some space. So I believe that you have noted down these things. এটাকে তোমরা তুলে নাও, এরপর আমি এটা একটু আলোচনা করছি স্পেস নিয়ে। So let's see, is there any space? Okay, I can discuss here. Let's take a Cartesian coordinate system, x, y, and z. And in this space or in this Cartesian coordinate system, we will just show a vector field. আমরা এখানে একটা ভেক্টর ফিল্ডকে দেখাবো। ভেক্টর ফিল্ড মনে করো একটা ফোর্স ফিল্ড, ফোর্স ভেক্টর ফিল্ড, যেটা হচ্ছে ফাংশন অফ এক্স, ওয়াই অ্যান্ড জেড। জাস্ট রিকল হোয়াট ডু মিন বাই দ্য ভেক্টর ফিল্ড। একবার তোমরা মনে করো যে ভেক্টর ফিল্ড বলতে কি বোঝায়। ভেক্টর ফিল্ড মিনস ইফ আই কনসিডার এ স্পেস, এই যে 3 dimensional space, it is a 3 dimensional space. In this space if at each and every point, যদি এর প্রত্যেকটা পয়েন্টে আমি যদি এখানে several point নিই, if at each and every point I can get a force vector, then the collection of all these force vectors are known as a force vector field. What it means, এর মানেটা কি না, প্রত্যেকটা বিন্দুতে আমি যদি একটা করে এই ফোর্স ফিল্ডের থেকে যদি ফোর্সের একটা করে ফোর্স ভেক্টর পাই, তার মানে একটা করে ফোর্সের ম্যাগনিটিউড এবং ডিরেকশন যদি পাই, মনে করো এই বিন্দুতে দ্য ফোর্স ভেক্টর ইজ অ্যালং দিস ডিরেকশন, এই বিন্দুতে ফোর্স ভেক্টর ইজ অ্যালং দিস ডিরেকশন, এই বিন্দুতে এইদিকে, এদিকে, এখানে। সো অ্যাট ইচ অ্যান্ড এভরি পয়েন্ট if I get some force vectors, then collectively this whole vectors I can do, or I can take much more points. যত বেশি পয়েন্ট নেবে তত এই ফোর্স ফিল্ডটা বেশি ভালো করে এক্সপ্রেস করা যাবে। and it is a continuous force, it is a collection of all forces is known as the force field. So in place of, if I take the velocity as a vectors, then it creates a velocity vector field. যদি velocity যদি আমি electric field নিই, so at each and every point it represents some electric vectors. Is it clear? So this is the concept of force vector field. You all know that one. So now, so integration of a vector function along a given line or path in the space, then this is known as the line integration. What it means, মনে করো in this vector field, এই vector field এ, that means এই স্পেসের মধ্যে if I take one line or curve, let's say this is the AV curve and the curve is from A to V, okay? If I take one curve here, so then if I want to integrate these vectors along this curve, ভালো করে দেখো, if I want to integrate this vector along this curve, this is known as the vector line integration. What it means, মনে করো if I consider this point P, at that point this is the force vector field, sorry this is the force vector, one of the vector among these several vectors. So within this vector field, F is a vector at the point P. So this force is not along the line or along the curve. এই যে ফোর্সটা, এই ফোর্সটা কি কার্ভ বরাবর আছে? অবশ্যই নেই। But according to the definition of the line integration, the integration of a vector field, that means total vector field এর কথা বলা হচ্ছে এখানে, আমি এখানে একটা ভেক্টরকে দেখাচ্ছি। So integration of a vector field or function along a given line. So along this AB line, এই AB line বরাবর if I want to integrate these vectors, যেমন এইখানে P পয়েন্টে একটা ভেক্টর আছে, আমি এই দিক বরাবর একে ইন্টিগ্রেট করতে চাইছি, I want to integrate this F along this one. যেমন মনে করো এটা একটা Q বিন্দু, at the Q point this vector is along this direction, but I want to integrate this vector along this line. So at each and every point, if there are several vectors, if I integrate or if I add or if I sum all these vectors along this line, then this is known as the vector line integration. Okay, so how mathematically this vector line integration is discussed or derived or expressed? দেখো ম্যাথমেটিক্যালি কিভাবে ভেক্টর লাইন ইন্টিগ্রেশন কে লেখা হয় এটা তুলে নিয়েছো আশা করি। আই এম জাস্ট drawing a picture here to clear what is the mathematical representation of the line integration. So according to the definition, this is a three-dimensional space x, y and z, and let's say this represents a vector field, and this vector field, let's say this vector field is force vector field. Okay, এখানে প্রত্যেকটা পয়েন্টে একটা করে ফোর্স ভেক্টরস আছে, collectively this is a vector field, and in this vector field one curved path AB is there. For that moment I am taking only one vector, আমি একটা ভেক্টর নিচ্ছি from this vector field. এই ভেক্টর ফিল্ডে প্রত্যেকটা পয়েন্টে ভেক্টরস আছে, I am taking one vector, let's say this is the vector F, which is acting at the point P along this direction. So if we want to integrate, or first, what is the definition of the line integration? I have to integrate the vectors along this AB, sorry, this is B, AB path at different points. Let's say at that point there is a vector F, at that point there is a vector F. So at different point I have to first find out the component of F vector along this curve. At the point P, what is the component of F vector along this curve? At the point, let's say this point is R, what is the component of F vector along this one? So if we add all these components, then we can get what is the value of these F vectors along this AB line. This is the vector line integration. So what is the mathematical expression for that one? Later on I will also prove this mathematical expression. First আমরা দেখব যে mathematical expression টা কি. So for that moment, forget about this other vectors, we are considering only one point P. First, if we divide this whole path AB by an elementary length dr, আমি প্রথমে কি করছি না AB পাথটাকে একটা ছোট ছোট এলিমেন্টারি লেন্থ ইকুয়াল লেন্থ যেগুলোর মাঝখান বরাবর প্রত্যেকটা স্ট্রেট লাইন, these are very infinitesimally small, and what is the length of this one? It is dr. So what I am taking, I am just dividing the whole path at the point P. You can also find out this is the dr. Okay, so I am just subdividing the whole path with small segments. আমি ছোট ছোট সেগমেন্টে ভাগ করে নিচ্ছি যার প্রত্যেকটার দৈর্ঘ্য infinitesimally small. This is the length dr. Okay, and what is the direction of these segments? The direction of these segments along the curve, যেমন at the point P, what is the direction of this dr? It is along this one. Let's say it is the T. So at each point the direction of this segment is along the tangent of the curve. এটা আমরা ভাবতে পারি, but at that moment let's say this is the length of this one is dr, and the vectorically this one is dr vector. So this is the dr vector. What is the mathematical definition? Mathematical definition, the integration of this vector field, right now integration of this vector field along the curve AB is defined by integration A to V F vector dot dr vector. So this is known as the line integration of the given vector field along the curve AB. Why and how this thing representing the vector line integration? কেন এটা vector line integration কে represent করে? Let's see it. So for that moment I am just erasing this one and redraw. So this is the curve A to B, and at any point, let's say this is the F vector, this is the point P, and here I am taking a small segment which is dr vector and its length is only dr. Okay, so now first if I want to integrate this F vector along this curve, then first I have to find out what is the component of F vector along this curve. So first write down component of F vector along the curve or along the dr. At that point we can write along the dr is equal to F vector dot unit vector of dr vector. Why? আমি চাইছি কি what is the component F ভেক্টরের dr ভেক্টর বরাবর কম্পোনেন্ট কত। তাহলে আমরা জানি যে মনে করো if this is A vector and if this is B vector, what is the component of A vector along the B vector? So first I have to find out what is the unit vector along the B vector. Let's say n cap is the unit vector along the B vector. So then component of A vector along B vector is nothing but A vector dot n cap. এটাই তো component. So here A vector means F vector, so here we can write this is F vector, and along this direction this is dr vector. So let's say n cap is the unit vector along the dr vector. মনে করো যে dr vector বরাবর n cap হচ্ছে unit vector. So what is the component of F vector along this dr vector is nothing but F vector dot n cap. So this is the component. Clear? Okay, so here we can write that is F vector. If I say this is n cap is the unit vector along this dr direction, so it is F vector dot n cap. আচ্ছা, যদি dr vector হয় and এর ইউনিট ভেক্টর যদি n cap হয়, তাহলে আমরা n cap সমান কি লিখতে পারি? dr vector by magnitude of dr vector. So that means dr vector by dr we can write easily. So it is nothing but F vector dot dr vector by dr. So this is the component of this F vector. So if I take another point q, let's say this is the F vector acting along this direction, again I am taking this dr vector along this direction. So what is the component of F vector along this dr direction? It is again F vector dot dr vector by dr. So this is the component here. So if I add all these components, যদি আমি এই প্রত্যেকটা কম্পোনেন্টকে ছোট ছোট সেগমেন্টে অ্যাড করি, this addition means nothing but the integration. So I can write the component of all F vectors along this AB direction in this way. So integration A to B F vector dot dr vector by dr into dr. Is not it? This is the integration. So this dr will be cancelled out, and we can write out it is nothing but A to V F vector dot dr vector. So what is this? A F vector dot dr vector A to B eta ki? This is the component of all vectors. Let's say this is F vector is here, component of all vectors along this AB curve, and this is nothing but the line integration according to the definition. So that's why the line integration along the curve is known. It is shown mathematically in this way. Okay, next, in place of this open curve, যদি open curve এর পরিবর্তে কোনো vector field এ if there is a closed curve, let's say a closed curve, I am taking a closed curve like that one, okay, and this curve is placed in this vector field. So at that point, different point, the vector are acting in different direction. So if we want to integrate this F vector field along this closed curve, basically it is taken anti-clockwise direction closed curve এর ক্ষেত্রে. So how this integration is represented? এই ইন্টিগ্রেশনটাকে রিপ্রেজেন্ট করা হয় integral symbol with a round F vector dot dr vector. Dr is nothing but a small elementary length over this closed curve. This is also known as the contour. So we can write here C. That means it is a closed line integration. Is it clear? So this is the open line integration. This is the closed line integration. There is a special things about this line integration. আরেকটা মজার ব্যাপার বলবো. Anyhow, if this closed line integration, okay, it is F. আচ্ছা, closed হতে হবে তার কোনো মানে নেই. If somehow that okay, let's take the closed line integral in the contour. If F dot dr is equal to 0, যদি কোনো closed contour বরাবর বা closed curve বরাবর line integration যদি 0 হয়ে যায়, then we can say this given vector field is known as conservative ভেক্টর ফিল্ড. তখন আমরা সেটাকে বলবো কনজারভেটিভ ভেক্টর ফিল্ড. এবং সেই সময় at that moment we also know that curl of this vector field must be 0. যদি কোনো ভেক্টর ফিল্ড কনজারভেটিভ ভেক্টর ফিল্ড হয় তাহলে তার কার্ল 0 হবে. ঠিক আছে? Again, if curl is 0 of any vector field, আমরা এটাও জানি যে curl of f যদি 0 হয়, f is a gradient of some স্কেলার ফাংশন। তার মানে যদি কোনো কনজারভেটিভ ভেক্টর ফিল্ড, কোনো একটা ভেক্টর ফিল্ড কনজারভেটিভ কি কনজারভেটিভ নয়, if there is a contour or curve is given, along this curve if we find out this line integration, closed line integration is 0, then we can immediately say this given vector field is a conservative vector field. আর যদি কনজারভেটিভ ভেক্টর ফিল্ড হয় কার্ল অফ f0 হবে, আর কার্ল অফ f0 হলে this f can be produced from some scalar function phi. So these are some important information. Later on I will use rigorously these informations when we will solve different problems. Very interesting these facts are. Okay, so এই ইনফরমেশনগুলো খুব গুরুত্বপূর্ণ পরবর্তী ক্ষেত্রে আমাদের, আমরা অনেক প্রবলেম সলভ করব। So I will not make this video longer. So right now I'll stop here. In the next video I will solve several problems, some important problems, and basically I will focus on the previous year's problem. আগের যে বছরগুলিতে কলকাতা ইউনিভার্সিটি সেই প্রবলেমগুলোকে সলভ করব, অ্যান্ড কিছু নিজে আলাদা প্রবলেম সলভ করব যেগুলো ডিফারেন্ট কম্পিটিটিভ এক্সামের ক্ষেত্রেও খুব গুরুত্বপূর্ণ। So that's all for the day, and we'll meet again in the next video.